Now, I want you to feel the difference when I put my body behind the kick. When I count to 3, exhale. Strong. I'll be kicking you.
What is this thing you do?
In Cantonese, 截拳道, the way of the intercepting fist.
Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco on the 27th of November 1940, the year of the dragon. This combination of Eastern heritage and the influence of the West remained with Lee throughout his life and would lead to a revolution in the martial arts and action filmmaking. Kung Fu originated from the Shaolin Temple in about 600 AD. From that time, it developed into a wide variety of martial arts systems governed by clans, families, and rules of tradition. Hong Kong in the 1950s was a melting pot for these Kung Fu systems, as many mainland Chinese found their way to the island colony to escape war, famines, floods, and the communist push. It was in this environment that a young Bruce Lee first developed his love of the martial arts, and also where he first experienced racial prejudice, when he found many Kung Fu teachers would not pass their knowledge on to him, as he was not a full-blood Chinese.
What Bruce did, as relayed to me, that he could never learn from the top man, because in those days, Kung Fu practitioners were quite prejudiced, and they didn't usually share the knowledge with other people from other styles. So what Bruce did, he knew that, so what he did would go to the second or the third or fourth man in the system and say, well, look at how would you like to learn Wing Chun? And I'll trade you my Wing Chun knowledge for your praying mantis. Let's say it's northern praying mantis. And that's what he did, because he knew that the head instructor wouldn't teach him.
Studying these different martial arts exposed Lee to the idea that all martial arts had something to offer, that no one system had all the answers. He moved a step further from tradition when he studied Western boxing at La Salle College and picked up European fencing from his elder brother Peter, a Commonwealth fencing champion. With this amalgam of martial arts knowledge, Bruce traveled to the United States in 1958.
I met Bruce Lee in 1959. He had landed in San Francisco where he was born, and ultimately through Ruby Chow, who sponsored him up here. He came up here, and actually I met him through some of the former friends that had been working out with Bruce.
The effects of the prejudice shown to him in Hong Kong were still with Bruce when he decided to break the centuries-old taboo and teach Kung Fu to non-Chinese at his Seattle class. This film is the only record of Bruce Lee's teaching at that time.
There was some animosity against him teaching to outsiders because they felt that to teach the outsiders, it was a situation where you were giving a lot of secrets away to people that were physically much bigger than we are, and that they would be using it against us.
Now, relate to me. Move, move. No. Don't just move for the sake of moving. Relate to me. Relationship. You're where? Adjust. Now open it up a little bit. Feel the wind blowing. Ah, the bird. You hear the bird chirping?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Now, let it flow. Open it up. Kick with it. Yes! Now, how did it feel to you?
Like, I didn't kick, it kicked.
Terrific. Now, once more.
I liken Bruce Lee to Jimi Hendrix. There was guitar playing before Jimi Hendrix and guitar playing after Jimi Hendrix. It was complete, the world changed for guitar players. And the same thing with Bruce Lee. There was martial arts before Bruce Lee and there's martial arts after Bruce Lee.
You think a fight is one blow, one kick? until you can put combinations together without even thinking, until you learn how to keep moving and to endure. Hire a bodyguard or lead a less aggressive life. Don't charge in blindly. You got to listen. Listen.
The film success that awaited Bruce Lee was still a long way off in 1964, when he started to write for the world's #1 martial arts magazine, Black Belt.
The owner of the company had seen him at a tournament and just saw his talent right off, and they struck up a relationship, and he liked Bruce's ideas and where Bruce was headed with martial arts, and throwing out the stuff that didn't work in self-defense and street self-defense and so forth. And Bruce seemed to really have zeroed in on this to bring something new to the martial arts.
One day, early in the spring, Bruce came to me and said that he'd had a call from 20th Century Fox that they wanted him to come down and interview for possibly the position of Kato. So he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, God, Bruce," I said, "you got to go down." And so he went down there, and of course, the rest is history.
The Green Hornet lasted for only one season, but other parts followed, and Lee was convinced that his martial arts could lead to bigger things.
At one time, he was given the offer to open up a chain of Kato schools around the United States, and he said no, that he didn't feel that's where it was at. And he says, "I can expose my ideas, my philosophies through film," because he felt that film was the best medium in which to educate the public.
Using his home video camera, Lee recorded the staging of fight scenes to help him further develop his film craft. This rare footage shows Lee practicing with his friend and student, James Coburn.
We trained a lot. I had a large patio outside when I was living on Tower Road. We had a big old Spanish place. It was kind of a patio. We trained out there. He brought a big bag, a tackle bag, and so we had it hanging up out there, using it for side kicks. Saying, "Okay, now this is what you do it." You know, again, whoop, bang, and he kicked this bag. I guess it was about a 150-pound bag, and it went flying out busted it in the middle. It went flying out into the lawn with these. It was filled with rags, and we were picking up rags for months around there, little bits and pieces of rags. It was all over the lawn. And that was really an astounding, and it shocked him as much as it. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Lee also collaborated with another student, Academy Award-winning scriptwriter Sterling Silliphant, on the script for the second episode of Longstreet. This program remains Lee's single most relevant cinematic work on his martial art, Jeet Kune Do.
What is this thing you do?
In Cantonese, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist.
Intercepting fist, huh?
Or foot. Come on, touch me. Any way you can. You see? To reach me, you must move to me. Your attack offers me an opportunity to intercept you. In this case, I'm using my longest weapon, my sidekick, against the nearest target, your kneecap. This can be compared to your left jab in boxing, except it's much more damaging.
I see. Well, speaking of a left jab...
Oh, this time I intercept your emotional tenseness. You see, from your thought to your fist, how much time was lost?
Not much.
In terms of film, the distance from taking a swing and selling it to the camera, you could be, you know, pretty far away, but sometimes it gets very close. I do remember the fact that the cameraman saying, "Oh, fellas, hey, we have to slow this down. I know it'll look terrific on camera, but when we come in close, we have to really slow it down, otherwise it'll never sell. Nobody will see anything."
Sterling was very much interested in the martial arts at that time and was taking lessons from Bruce, and suggested that we use him as a recurring character, and wrote the pilot script of the series which followed the concept of the movie quite closely, to introduce and set up the situation and the relationship between the Franciscus character and Bruce.
Where am I?
There.
No! Your thoughts are wrong.
Look, I'm trying to learn how to fight, not how to think.
May it be well with you, Mike.
Bruce is a very complex human being. First of all, there was no pretense about Bruce Lee. He was very much aware of who he was, what his roots were, what his background was. He was very proud of being Chinese. He was very proud of his martial arts. He was a perfectionist when it came to what he did, both in terms of martial arts and in front of the camera.
If you try to remember, you will lose. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow or creep or drip or crash. Be water, my friend.
Despite the quality of his work in Longstreet, the racial attitudes of the Hollywood studios caused Lee to be rejected for the lead role in the TV series Kung Fu.
After Bruce died, I came back to the States, interviewed Sterling Siliphant, who had also created Streets of San Francisco, and he confirmed the story about the fact that the network really wouldn't let him build up Bruce's part any larger than it was.
Disappointed, he returned to Asia for a date with destiny in a small village in Thailand to film The Big Boss.
I don't believe in system, Mr. Longstreet, nor in method. And without system, without method, what's to teach?
But you had to learn. You weren't born knowing how to take apart 3 men in a matter of seconds.
True, but I found the cause of my ignorance.
Well, help me find mine.
With Longstreet, Lee had portrayed a martial arts teacher possessed of great inner calm. This characterization was in stark contrast to the roles that followed when Bruce Lee returned to Hong Kong in 1971.
I liked his attitude because he would go somewhere, and if he hit a brick wall, he'd just change direction and go around it. Because he was, he excited Raymond Chow. He was on a talk show, I think, when he first came to Hong Kong. And there was a Japanese guy on there that was doing tug-of-war, and he could sort of put his chi down this way and hold 3 or 4 people. And Bruce was on the same talk show. And they said, well, you're a strong man, Bruce. Why don't you try pull this guy off his mark? And Bruce said, that's not what I do, but I can knock him out. And the Japanese guy went, whoa, whoa, whoa. And Bruce just knocked him out. And then Raymond saw this and called him up, and that's how they got together.
This meeting led to a contract with the Hong Kong film company Golden Harvest and the start of Lee's first picture, The Big Boss. The Big Boss was Bruce Lee as never seen before. His unquestioned mastery of the martial arts exploded onto the screen, with an animal savagery far removed from anything previously seen on film. The film presented many challenges for Bruce. He choreographed all his own work and set up the fight scenes. His contribution to the film was in a much greater capacity than that of an actor. Tony Lau Wing played a major role in The Big Boss. He recalls Bruce Lee being challenged by one of the local Thai fighters.
佢講服咗個武術導演，咁嗰個武術導演有好多泰國嗰啲武師，嗰啲武師就係玩泰拳嘅，咁就有冇搞錯啊？你仲叻過個武術導演 ？OK，come on， 你咁打得同我打啦咁，即係同佢打，真係埋去即係 OK， 嗱我而家打你，我而家打你，即係就咁對住我而家打你，我而家打你睇住準備我打你個鼻，嘣！ 即係你知道佢嗱，你而家打我，你覺得咁到啦，好快嘅，即係佢手腳係好快去做，即係我哋好信佢一樣嘢，佢係可以係。
Lee returned to the United States to appear in 3 more episodes of Longstreet. Despite the now serious offers from major Hollywood studios, Lee realized his immediate future would be in Hong Kong.
When he came to Hong Kong and helped to redesign and reinvent how martial arts were used in the Chinese cinema, it was with an eye to using the Hong Kong cinema as a stepping stone back to Hollywood and using Hollywood as a stepping stone to becoming an international star.
Lee's next film, Fist of Fury, broke all Asian box office records. Bruce Lee is now a star. He quickly moved on to his next production. Way of the Dragon was the first Hong Kong film to be shot in Europe. It was Lee's film in every respect, as he wrote, produced, directed, and starred.
Well, I first met Raymond Chow. I knew him, and he asked me if I wanted to be in a movie with Bruce Lee, and I had never heard of him. But I told him, well, why not? I haven't done that before. So he said, all right, we'll have a car pick you up at 8 o'clock the next morning. And when we got to the studios, we'd shot the first shot within about 10 minutes. So it was fast and furious. The most impressive thing I think I saw was when two things. One, he fell down on his one finger and started doing push-ups from a standing start. And he did love to show off. I mean, he was good and he knew it. And the other thing was when he kicked out the light from a standing start. Kicked out a light bulb about 7 feet up in the air.
Many rate Lee's battle with Chuck Norris as the greatest ever martial arts fight sequence to be presented on film. Way of the Dragon was the most successful film in Hong Kong cinema history. Bruce started work on his next project, The Game of Death. But filming was interrupted when he was offered the lead role in the first Hong Kong Hollywood co-production, Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon was filmed on location at Tai Tam Bay. It introduced Bruce Lee to the world as the first Chinese superstar and established a new international film genre, the martial arts movie.
In this position, your arms are useless. Yeah. Can you kick or stomp me? No. Then, if you wish to survive, what do you do? I don't know. Bite. Bite? Are we not animals? You all right?
I can't find much evidence to the contrary, Lee.
Bite, huh? Biting is efficient in close quarter. But don't make a plan of biting. That is a very good way to lose your teeth.
Bruce Lee's street fighting skills were real, as a young challenger was to find out on the set of Enter the Dragon.
So anyway, there was this kid and said, I'll bet you anything I'm faster than you are. Bruce says, okay, if you're betting me let me help you out. He draw a circle on the ground.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Remember, he draw a circle on the ground.
Yeah.
He says, I'm going to let you hit me 3 times.
Yeah.
If you push me out of the ring, I lose. But I'm going to hit you back 1 time. So the kid did, right?
Yeah.
Of course, he never pushed Bruce out of the ring. And then Bruce says, okay, my turn. So I tell the kid, he said, I am going to hit you right here.
Mm-hmm.
He said, ready? And the kid says, what do you mean ready? Before he said anything, his teeth stopped falling out of the mouth. He was just so fast.
On the set, there were language problems. There were, you know, half a dozen people who spoke English and the rest spoke Cantonese. So everything took longer because it went through periods of translation, often coming back mistaken. Things were built that weren't built the way they were to what they were supposed to be. That procedure went on. It was slow. I was fed up with the whole business of doing martial arts fights after the last big scene, which took a week or 8 days to film. I thought, enough of this. I don't want to ever do this martial art fight stuff again in my life.
This rare behind-the-scenes footage is the only known record of the filming of Enter the Dragon.
The picture, it had a very interesting life. It was the first co-production ever done between a Hong Kong film company and an American studio. There have been a number of pictures that had filmed on location in Hong Kong, going all the way back to the 50s, you know. But nobody had ever actually tried to do a co-production. And nobody was quite sure what a co-production meant in Hong Kong terms. We had a Chinese film industry where most people spoke Cantonese or Mandarin, and they made films that were very stylized. So we were all feeling our way as we set up the mechanism for that co-production. It actually turned out quite well, although it was a little bit flying by the seat of our pants as we went. We were making the rules up. We started on the project in October, preparing. We started shooting in January, and we finished shooting in March. The picture was completed in post-production by the end of June and was released at the end of August. So that was 10 months door to door.
One of the things that Bruce wanted in the clips was as much realism as he possibly could, as we could muster. So when Jim said, you know, when we were ready to go, he said, I'll just give it a bit of a tap, and I said, no, give me your best shot. So he did, and I went down in a heap, and I thought that was the end of it. But then the cameraman said, well, now we'll take another take from the opposite corner and so forth, and there were 6 takes in total. Each time I got 6 of his best shots, so I was a little sore that night.
Bruce Lee's drive for perfection did not just extend to the fight sequences. He saw this film as the ideal vehicle for presenting an accurate view on his martial arts philosophy.
Bruce Lee was actually responding to a frustration that he felt and had shared with us, that writers in Hollywood were writing a lot of, if you will, techno-babble about the martial arts that had very little to do with the real world of martial arts or the spirituality of martial arts or what the philosophy that goes hand in hand with learning martial arts. I mean, if you spend time with any serious martial artist, you begin to realize as much time is spent on meditation and concentration and thinking about your body and your place in the universe as is spent on punching bags or breaking bricks. And Bruce felt that as part of what we could accomplish with Enter the Dragon, part of it was to showcase his martial arts skills, but part of it was also to try and educate the public as to what martial arts was really all about. And so he asked that in those scenes where martial arts was being discussed, that we at least try and put it in a proper context.
So when he did Enter the Dragon, he has many a time called in for the discussion of the script. So in a certain way, he contributed as much as anybody that was supposed to be involved, because he wants I think it's the first time he showed the equality of East and West that you can work together as one team, regardless of color of skin.
On the 10th of May, 1973, while working in post-production on Enter the Dragon, the first signs appeared of the problems to come for Bruce Lee.
He passed out. He passed out for a half hour, and it scared him to death, didn't know what the hell it was. And so he came over and had a full examination, and, you know, like the doctors gave him a clean bill of health. And so he was happy. They said it was just fatigue. I guess the doctors couldn't see what was happening.
Rumors and speculation about his death were driven by a ruthless print media, which was happy to feed off the public ignorance of what the official autopsy revealed. In fact, Bruce Lee's death was simply caused by an abnormal hypersensitivity to a prescription painkiller.
God, it stunned me. I had no idea. Sterling called me up, and you know, he said Bruce is dead. And I thought, oh, you're kidding. You're kidding. No, he died. Something, you know. And then I thought back that he had this thing that he'd passed out before.
When Bruce died, it was like Hong Kong stopped. Everybody talked about it. Everybody. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without, if you mentioned his name, the head went down. And that was so sad that a lot of people, I think, I was only there a few days after he died. I went to his funeral service and left. And a lot of people didn't want to believe it. They thought it was some kind of publicity stunt, because how can a man of this physical stature just die? You know, he was like 32 years old in his prime and one of the fittest human beings I'd ever come across. And it was almost disbelief, I would say, would be a good word to use for his death. People couldn't believe that he wasn't there anymore.
Enter the Dragon was released 1 month after Bruce Lee's death. It surpassed all box office expectations, grossing over $200 million. But there was still to be one last testament to Bruce Lee's martial arts genius, his unfinished work, The Game of Death.
All right, now listen to me. Listen to my movement, okay? Keep moving. Break and go. Now, the two motions are both part of one motion. Now, you try. Faster. A little bit smoother. Well, your head and body are still not one.
Well, when will they get together?
Once more!
By 1972, the circumstances of Bruce Lee, the Los Angeles martial arts teacher, had changed dramatically. As Dan Inosanto found out when he traveled to Hong Kong to appear with Lee in The Game of Death.
When I came to visit him, this is for the filming of The Game of Death, he said that because of his status of being very famous, I mean, I've never been with him in a place where there was like 20 to 30, possibly 50 people just crowding around him. So he didn't have any privacy, and he didn't like that part. But he enjoyed having what I call fame. So I think with his newfound status as a movie star, he had definitely some dislikes about it because it invaded his privacy.
When Bruce achieved success in Hong Kong, very quickly they stopped making swordplay movies and started making nothing but martial arts movies. And the truth was, he had a lot of imitators. Everybody was trying to do the Bruce Lee style, which, if you get off into the esoteric side of Jeet Kune Do, Wu Wei Yo Wei, the style that has no style, was Bruce's philosophy, which was to take a little bit from every style of martial arts and every style of fighting. And so he tried to employ that and apply that in each film to make each fight unique and different.
He did write quite a bit of of stuff on martial arts, and he developed his own style, and which was very minimalist. It really was. It was a most undemonstrative style of martial arts. And then when you read all this, and then you see Bruce on the screen, and then instead of this very sort of soft, introspective personality, it goes whack. I mean, what he did on the screen was absolutely no relation whatsoever to what he was teaching or studying. But Bruce understood cinema, and he made it look terrific.
When we were preparing The Game of Death, we started, this was a Hong Kong film, so we didn't have the entire script. We had a concept, and we were going to shoot a series of fight sequences that would bring together some of the greatest martial artists of the world, and Bruce would fight them one by one by one. The essence being that by the time he got to the top of this mythical tower, he would have shown that the best style was to have a style that was flexible, and that he would defeat each of these martial artists by understanding and using their inflexibility to defeat them. And it sounded great, except that when you get past the point of, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, and he's now trouncing each martial artist, there still had to be something that was going to be at the top of the tower. We never came up with what it was that was going to be at the top of the tower. So when we went off to shoot Enter the Dragon, we stopped shooting Game of Death. Bruce looked at me and he said, "Thank God we don't have to solve that problem for 6 months."
I was supposed to play a Filipino from the southern Philippines the way he wanted it. And that's what he portrayed me as. But I think what I did, Bruce Lee comes in later, but I fight this guy, the first guy, and he has this big log. And he fights me. It's like a log. It's more of a log than a pole, and I fight with him. Then the next one comes in, and I fight him. He has a little, it was a big stick, but then it got smaller. And I fight him with the stick, and I beat him. And then Bruce Lee comes in. He takes over, and then he beats him. I don't know if I was on the 4th floor or the 3rd floor, because he was constantly changing it. And then the last floor was the Style of the Unknown, which was played by Kareem.
While the ending of the film was not yet finalized, Bruce had decided that it would involve Australian actor George Lazenby.
The main thing was he wasn't going to kill me. He said, "I'm not going to kill you. You're going to be a good guy," because he killed practically everybody in these movies. They turned out to be bad. But he thought that I'd be a great communication rod to the people that he didn't get through to because of his Chineseness. And he said, some people don't see that we're all the same. He said, they don't see our souls. He said, our cultures are different. But Bruce was that kind of guy that wanted to go the best. He wanted to be the best he could. And he had no time for people who were wishy-washy or didn't care or weren't sincere. And it didn't matter where they were from. And I could tell that this guy didn't care that I was Wilo or Australian or Caucasian or whatever. He knew that I knew that this is the way to go. That's through spirit and not through nationality or religion or any of that stuff, which people generally bond through. I was going to be Bruce's man that came in and saved him at the end and got him out of this, it was some kind of a house, pyramid thing with a top floor, and I came in there and that was going to be my introduction. And I was like a mentor, and he was like super physical, but I was wiser. And then I was going to fade out again and then come into another movie with him later. And that's what we're talking about.
Whatever Game of Death might have been, it remains the final work of the greatest martial artist the world has ever seen. the world, Bruce Lee was a movie star, but to the martial arts community, he was the man who revolutionized the fighting arts. Bruce Lee, in his lifetime, authorized only 3 people to teach on his behalf: Taki Kimura, James Lee, and Dan Inosanto.
At the time of Bruce Lee was alive, there was only 3 of us that were sanctioned by Bruce Lee to teach it. That was Taki Kimura, and James Lee, of course, passed away, and he was of Oakland, and myself.
Taki Kimura taught at Bruce Lee's Seattle school. Bruce ranked him as his most senior instructor in Junfan Kung Fu. Today, Taki continues to teach in Seattle. He is also the keeper of Bruce Lee's final resting place at Lakeview Cemetery.
Right now we're up on Capitol Hill, Lakeview Cemetery, which is probably the first or second oldest cemetery in the city. And Bruce was, when he died, and Linda brought him back here to have him buried here in Seattle for the reason that this was his second love as far as where he wanted to live. And she looked down the hill down there beyond that little columbarium or whatever you call it, and that's where most of the Chinese are buried. And so she looked there first, but she was looking elsewhere, and she came up here and she found that this gave a very panoramic view of the University of Washington over there where we went to school, Lake Washington over that overlooked up here, and so she felt this was a real ideal place for him to be. So this is where she had him buried. And of course, Brandon, having died, why he was buried next to his father here.
Dan Inosanto is the only man to be certified by Bruce Lee as an instructor in Jeet Kune Do. He has faithfully continued to develop and pass on Jeet Kune Do since Bruce's death in 1973.
They can be found in Western boxing.
In the early days, Dan was the instructor of Bruce Lee's Los Angeles Jeet Kune Do school.
This is the original logbook of the attendance of the Chinatown School, which started in 1967. And at this time, he appointed me as the head instructor, and he would oversee this by coming in and watching me teach from time to time. If he wasn't filming, he would come in on Saturday and Sunday and sometimes teach the class or sometimes observe the class. But the majority of times he came in, he would just take over the class and teach, and I would just assist.
Many of these early students have since been authorized by Dan to teach.
You could see that different people like Bob Bremer that trained, and we have people like Larry Hartzell that trained at that time period. And it's the same thing over here. We have Bob Bremer and Ted Wong. These are different people who trained. Richard Bastillo. This is again. Alfred Haber, who probably had the best attendance in Chinatown at that time. Daniel Lee. Teague. It shows the different people that trained during that time period.
Dan continues to teach in Los Angeles. His academy is a meeting and training place for martial artists from all over the world. The academy is not just a teaching location. It houses many of the original banners and training equipment items from Bruce Lee's martial arts schools.
This is Sifu Bruce's original heavy bag that he used back in the 60s. It's still holding up pretty good, so it's quite big. I think it's pretty close to 200 some pounds.
You want to kick it when it's coming?
During this time period, we used to train because we didn't have any tie pads, so Sifu Bruce advocated the use of using the football forearm guard. This here is the original punching shield, that his own personal punching shield, in fact. This was used as in the Way of the Dragon. If you notice this, he had one part. I had one arm, he had the other arm, and this was used in that picture, Way of the Dragon. This was a sign or the plaque that we had here. This is the truth in combat is different for each individual in the style. Research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what is your own. This here is used to hang in the Chinatown School along with other emblems. This, of course, is a picture of Sifu Bruce. To people here, he's referred to as the Sigung. And this thing I heard from Sifu Bruce, this is actually was in the Oakland branch, Bruce Lee's Tao Chinese Kung Fu, using no way as way. That literally means that he doesn't use any particular way, whether it's Chinese way or a Japanese way or an Okinawan way or a Korean way. He uses no way as his way. And having no limitation up there means, it means that he doesn't limit himself to one particular style or one particular discipline or one particular system or one particular way of using no limit as his limitation. This up here is the sign that hung in the first time he opened publicly, 1974. Man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system. This is a quote he gave back in 1968. This here is another quote. He says, "My followers in Jeet Kune Do, do listen to this. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. Truth is outside of all fixed patterns." He's talking about drills, he's talking about styles, he's talking about systems. And the last plaque is the original plaque that he made for the Chinatown School in 1967 when we opened up. And this is the original plaque that's up there.
What kind of game are you playing, Mike?
No game. It was a car horn. It was constant. See, when the sound diminished, I figured you were between me and the carriageway. When I got stronger, I figured you were leaving.
Very good. I was surprised.
Not enough.
You were relating very well, Mike. But you lost your awareness for a split second.
Listening?
And thinking. Your instincts are right. Sound. Any sound is important.
One of the key areas that distinguishes Jeet Kune Do from the other martial arts is that its concept allows the individual to develop personal combative attributes, as opposed to the classical martial arts, which merely teach a set type of technique.
As far as my memory will serve me, it started off as a style, and for about maybe a month or a month and a half. And then he realized that a style was too confining, it was too short. Then he realized that the combat is usually geared under certain principles that you would follow and certain concepts you would go. So he said, JKD is more of a concept, and it should be constantly researched. It's kind of like, I refer to it as research and development, and that you would research different fighting arts, which he did extensively. That's why I find it very humorous now that people want to go back to the original. Now, the original JKD is what they refer to as Jun Fan Gung Fu. That has certain stances, certain type of footwork, certain type of kicks, which was the basis for what he called at that time Jeet Kune Do. But Jeet Kune Do, as he said, I have not invented a new style or a method of training, whether it be Chinese, Japanese, Okinawan, Korean, or whatever. He says, these are just a way so I can learn about life and about combat in general, because life is combat, as he used to say.
Kick me in the stomach as hard as you can.
Well, wait a minute, I don't want to hurt you.
I'm holding an air shield. Come on.
Drive right through it, won't I?
I'll risk it.
To further develop attributes, Bruce favored the use of equipment such as the air shield that he used privately and in some of his films.
Yes. Boy, let's take a break, Mike.
I introduced the air shield to him and the foam shield, because he was always looking for different training methods. He wanted to kick it on different surfaces. I said, well, we know we use this in football, we block it. We sometimes hit it, tackle it. You know, I said, let's try punching and kicking it. And he said, nah, it won't. At first he said he didn't think it was going to be very good, but when I came back the next day, he had all these drills that you could do on the air shield and on the foam shield. And the reason why, he says, sometimes when a person kicks, you really can't tell if there's substance in it. And at that time period, everyone kicked that lockout side kick, or they did that round kick and the gi pop when they did the side kick and the round kick. And people mistook that for power. And he wanted to show that sometimes when you kick, he says, you got to see the results. And when you kick the air shield and you kick the foam shield, there is right away, it reevaluates your power, your direction of the kick. And so that's why he liked it so much. This is where the path that he led me on, because when we were training, we always research and experience with different things we came in contact with from different types of way Western boxing trainers would teach. He researched silat, which very few people at that time period even were into. He researched Thai boxing. He researched savat. He researched different grappling methods, known and unknown methods. He bought every book he can find in martial art, and he put the, I won't say the style, but he took the basic essence of what he called martial arts from that particular system and incorporated it into his own personal fighting system, which he called Jeet Kune Do.
Keep it up. Sensitivity. That's it. Good. Good.
So I'm just doing exactly what I feel that he would have wanted me to do if he was still alive. And that's a direction. And most of those people weren't into the research part. And I think I stated in my first book, he says, if you don't understand and join me in the research, you will not understand what Jeet Kune Do is all about. Jeet Kune Do is sometimes leaving the security of what you know best and learning from a person.
Yeah, Lee's going to teach me all this.
I cannot teach you. Only help you to explore yourself, nothing more.
All right, come on, let's explore some more of those kicks, huh?
And this is what he stressed. He says, you have to understand. You have to go in the areas where you don't feel comfortable in. And that's hard. Because if you feel comfortable at the punching range and your opponent wants to play in the kicking range, it might throw you off, or vice versa. If you feel comfortable at the kicking, punching, and this person wants to grapple, and he happens to get you on the ground, then you're playing his game. I'm trying to bring out a point here that is a different type of element, so you should be prepared to go in that. And that's what he stressed in all his philosophy. So I think, and I like to feel, and I think I know, that I think I'm going in the right direction that he wanted, because I'm still holding fast to his principles and concepts.
Bruce Lee left a legacy that revolutionized the martial arts and filmmaking. His memory is still held dear by those whose lives were touched by him.
I was in a store, and I wanted to buy these weights, which is about 150 pounds, and I didn't have the money. And I looked at it, and he said, well, let's go. And he said, boy, I wish I could get this. I just mentioned it. He said, you know, I wanted to buy some weights for Brandon. And at that time, Brandon was like 5 years old, so I thought it was kind of strange that he would buy these weights. And as we walked out, and when we got to my house, he dropped me off. He says, I was just kidding. It's not really for Brandon. It's for you. And as long as you use it, I will be very, very happy. So use it. And he gave me the weight. So I was very touched by that.
There was a whole world of film that America and Europe was ignorant of, which was martial arts films. And that by styling himself in the way that he did, he became, number one, the person to introduce the world to Chinese martial arts, and really in general to martial arts.
One of the things that impressed me enormously was just simple things like sitting in a jackknife position on the floor with arms folded and feet up in the air. Anyone who tries that for longer than 10 seconds, that's a tough ask. He used to do it for anything up to half an hour or more, just watching TV.
I said, gee, Bruce, what would you give to be 6'2" and 195 pounds? And he said, if I were 6'2" and 195 pounds, I'd rule the world.
It was my birthday, and I was with my wife and Linda Lee, and I had gotten to, I believe it was Mayako restaurant, and it was in Orange County, I believe. And I had brought $100 with me, so I figured that would be enough for the night. But I guess it's really expensive. So there, and I got there, and I was short, and the bill was over 100, and he could tell it in my face that there was something wrong, because when I saw the bill, I didn't have enough. And he slipped me $50 under the table without my wife knowing it, or possibly without even Linda knowing it. And he said, I could tell when you looked at the bill that you didn't have enough
One time, sitting in his office, he told me his dream was one day was to be a bigger movie star than Steve McQueen, who at the time was the biggest movie star in the world. It's a little ironic that 20 years later, more people probably remember Bruce Lee than remember Steve McQueen.
It wasn't his stature. It was, I mean, he really did, and I hate to use the word, but he had a charisma. I mean, he really seemed to be a few inches off the ground. He never really quite touched the ground, you know. There was a whip-cracking vitality about the guy. And of course, you know, rather than shake your hand, you'll demonstrate his, you know, the ability to send his foot past your nose, clearing it by at least a couple of tenths of an inch at about 140 miles an hour, and by way of introduction.
And then he said to Raymond, he said, "Give George $10,000. And Raymond said, "What?" Because Raymond was a businessman, and Bruce, he said, "George has got no money. Otherwise, he wouldn't be standing on the bus stop."
Bruce was trying to show us a way in which we could make ourselves better people. And the way I look at it is that, unfortunately, we have to go through the physical aspect of entering into the spiritual essence of the martial arts, and which I feel is the most important, the final plateau in one's life. And the reason I say that is because at that point, when the door opens to get you into that spiritual plateau, that's when you finally learn who you are, so that you can honestly react to anybody else without having any fear.
I know that when you speak to the younger film directors in Hong Kong today, they all grew up on the Bruce Lee films. Bruce Lee is to them still an idol. When you talk about what would you like to do, the answer is, I would like to make a film that could have as great an impact on the next generation as Enter the Dragon had on my generation. And I've been told that by not one Chinese director, by at least 5 or 6. And actors, by the way. You ask Jackie Chan who the biggest star in Jackie Chan's mind is, and he will say without a doubt, Bruce Lee.
Anyway, he completed his life, I think. I don't know what more he could have done. I mean, his influence is still felt, is still being felt. His technique is sure. It's down on film, and it's in his books. And it's in the memory of most of us. I mean, that's why we're here today, still trying to find out what it was that made him so great. It was certainly that essential self that Bruce was able to manifest. You know, he manifested. He was a true artist, a real artist.
Like everyone else, you want to learn the way to win, but never to accept the way to lose. To accept defeat, to learn to die is to be liberated from it. So when tomorrow comes, you must free your ambitious mind and learn the art of dying.